Welcome to this tutorial on solving absolute value equations. The one main thing that we need to be mindful of at the beginning of the problem is that we need to get the absolute value by itself before we do anything else. We need to isolate that absolute value. We cannot distribute into the absolute value. We cannot clear out fractions until we have the absolute value by itself. So the first thing we're going to do to make that happen is subtract 14x from both sides. We have to just work as if we were solving an equation. So the first thing that we do is get rid of anything that is being added or subtracted to the absolute value. The next thing that we do is get rid of anything that's multiplied by the absolute value. So we're going to divide both sides by 5 in this problem. On the left-hand side, the 5's cancel. Boop, boop, and they're gone. We're left with the absolute value of 7/5 x minus 1/2. On the right-hand side, be careful. Since the 5 is in the bottom, that's the same as saying we're multiplying through by 1/5. So I'm going to rewrite it for just a second. Then we could go through and just get rid of those parentheses. So when we do that, we're going to have the absolute value of 7/5 x minus 1/2 is equal to, remember, multiply the numerators, that's 8, multiply the denominators, that's 15, minus, this is like 14 over 1, so it's going to be 14 all over 5x. I'm going to highlight this step. It's an important step. We have the absolute value by itself. On tests, on quizzes, I will request to see that step before you proceed. Then we can set this up as if we had two separate equations. So this is going to split. On the one hand, we just get rid of the absolute value signs and rewrite the rest of the equation as it is. On the other hand, we get rid of those absolute value symbols, but we take the opposite of the other side of the equation. So now we're going to solve. Let's just stick to the left-hand side first. So I'm going to kind of put a little line down the middle here. We want to clean out the fractions. It'd be nice to clean out the fractions. So I'm going to multiply through on both sides by that least common multiple. And in this problem, it looks like 30 would work as our least common multiple. Notice how I show that I'm multiplying both sides by 30 and I have the parentheses. Those are key. So now we'll distribute. 30 divided by 5 is 6. 6 times 7 is 42. Keep the x. 30 divided by 2 is 15. That's going to be a minus 15. Is equal to, on the other side, we've got 30 divided by 15 is 2. 2 times 8 is 16. Minus 30 divided by 5 is 6. And 6 times 14. If you have a calculator and want to be sure you're right, use it. If you're pretty confident that the answer is going to be 84, then just hopefully you didn't make a mistake. So that's going to be 84x. Now here's just a little bit of advice. We would do the same thing over here on the right-hand side. We would need to distribute this negative sign. We would need to multiply both sides by 30 to clear out those fractions. But if you want to remember this, it could be helpful. It's going to end up being the same equation that we just simplified, except you're going to end up changing the signs on both items over on the right-hand side. Notice how those signs just simply changed to get the other equation. So now I'm just going to work out the left-hand side and then we'll deal with the right-hand side. I'm going to do everything at once. I want to get the x's on the left because that way it'll be a positive number. That's just my preference. You don't have to do it that way. Which means that we'll need to add the 15 to the right hand side. This looks like 126x is going to be equal to 31. We will need to divide both sides by 126 to get the x by itself. And I get that x is 31 over 126. We will need to look and see if that's simplified, but let's just do the right hand side first. So I'm going to need to get the x's over on the right if I want those to remain positive. I'll subtract the 42x from both sides. And that means we're going to add 16 to both sides. On the left-hand side, we get 1. And on the right-hand side, it looks like we get 42x. We need to get the x by itself, so we'll divide both sides by 42. And it looks like x is 1 over 42. And that can't be simplified because numerator is already as simplified as it can be. Now we said we wanted to check on the left here and see if 31 over 126 is simplified. So 31 divided by 126, math, convert it to fraction. It's simplified. But here's the thing. Remember with absolute value equations, your steps. The first step is you need to isolate the absolute value. Second step is form your two equations. Third step is to solve the two equations. But the final step is to check for extraneous solutions or extra solutions. You have to go to the calculator. So we're going to take 31 over 126 and we're going to store that as x. Now you need to go back to the original problem. So at the very top of the page, I'm going to type the left-hand side. 5 times. Now remember on 83 and 84 it goes into math. Scroll over to PRB. Scroll over to NUM because it's the number. We want the absolute value. So again, that's math. Scroll over to number. Hit enter for ABS. We want the absolute value of 7/5 times x minus 1/2. Close your parentheses. For those of you with the TI Inspire, you can just type ABS. But then we also need to add the 14x. I want the left-hand side of the original question. Woo! 8/3. The right-hand side is really easy. Hit 8/3, enter. Those don't match. Now don't freak out that they don't match, because in these problems that can happen. And you can still be right. So down here where we got 31 over 126, that doesn't work. It's an extraneous solution. When you write it up, that's how I want to see it. Don't circle it as a final answer because it really isn't a correct answer. It's extraneous. But please make sure that you've made that note, that it is an extraneous solution. Now we need to check the right-hand side. 1/42. So come over to the calculator. I'm going to type 1 divided by 42, store it as x. Boom. Now, if you don't want to retype what you've already typed for the left-hand side, it was a little annoying. Remember on the Inspire and on some TI-84s, you can scroll up till you get there and hit enter. For other TI-84s and for the TI-83, you just hit second enter until it scrolls back to that entry. When you hit enter on it, it's now using your new value of x. I'll type the 8/3 as well. Notice they match. So this solution does work. X equals 142 is good, and it is the only solution to this problem. So somehow on a quiz or a test, make sure that when you're done, you make it clear what your overall answer is. And if you had an extraneous solution, that solution is provided and labeled as extraneous as well. Make it clear what the answer is and what doesn't work. If you do that, you will absolutely be fine on a quiz or test.